Hello and welcome to Too Long Didn't Read, the only weekly show with expert views on the latest housing market news, the best social media content, and a joke-telling potato. Now here's your hosts, Randy Shiozaki and Scott Brickson.
Hello, agentpreneurs, and welcome to episode 2 of the TLDR show right here on the Daily List Report. I'm Randy.
I'm Scott.
We're still getting used to this. And today we've got a great show for you. Again, we're doing recaps of the top stories and the notables in the daily email that you get this every single day. Scott and his team curate those stories. We've also got in those emails, if you're not opening them, amazing shareables. We had 2 really cool ones so far this week. We had one from May the 4th. May the 4th be with you, Scott.
May the 4th be with you.
And we also had this great one for Cinco de Mayo, so happy Cinco de Mayo. So we've got lots and lots of really great content in there. Today, we're going to cover 3 big stories from the last week. The first one is about the proposed Biden tax cuts. The second one is about the hotness of this market. And then Scott's going to cover the third one, which is some hot markets across the country. So without further ado, let's take it away. Nice, Scott.
All right. I have always wanted to be president. It's about time.
You have.
So the number one story of the week by far, and in fact, the number one story of the last few months, was on Biden's proposals, Biden's tax proposals and the impact on homeowners. And there's a lot of them. I'm just going to run through the top 3. You need to be aware of these, whether you're a homeowner and or a home investor. The first is that the capital gains tax is likely to step up significantly. It's likely to double or even more than double for people that make more than $1 million in a year. Now, that may seem like it's way out of reach, and so it wouldn't affect many people. But if you think about it, right, if you're an older couple that's owned a home in Scottsdale, Arizona for 20 years, who knows what kind of capital gains you're sitting on if you decided to sell and move to a smaller apartment. So this is pretty meaningful. It would raise the tax rate, the capital gains tax rate, from 20% to near 40%. And I've even seen some numbers as high as 50. Okay, so that's important. A second one is they're thinking about doing away with the step-ups on inherited property. What is a step-up? It's basically a way that allows the people who are inheriting the property to avoid paying huge capital gains tax on the transfer. So if your parents bought a home 20 years ago at $100,000 and then they passed away and they gave it to you and it's now worth $500,000, usually you would need to pay a huge tax bill on that gap, that $400,000. But what's been happening is a so-called step up, where the property gets valued at the time of transfer to the market value, and that's your new cost basis. So that if then 10 years later you sold it for $1 million, you wouldn't be paying a $900,000 on a $900,000 capital gain. That'd only be $500,000. Okay, so that's also important. And the third one, and this touches very close to home, is they're thinking about doing away with the 1031 exchange, which creates a huge exemption from capital gains. For those of you who don't know what a 1031 exchange is, it's become very, very popular for small scale investors like yours truly to buy a property, renovate it, sell it at hopefully a higher price, and pay no capital gains tax, because you're taking all of the proceeds and rolling them into an equal or ideally higher valued property. And people continue to do this. They've rotated through 3, 4, 5 different 1031 exchanges, paying no capital gains tax the whole time. And if you think about it, if they eventually amass all these properties and when they pass away, give them to their kids, there's no tax on that huge string of transactions because of the step up.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Scott. Scott, what do you think this portends for the market, right? A lot of times savvy investors move ahead of sort of legislative or legal changes. What do you think might happen here?
Yeah, so my wife and I are absolutely rushing to get our current 1031 exchange done before any changes could get put in place. And my wife, who's a real estate agent, has also been contacted by several clients asking if they need to move quickly. So everyone's aware of this, right? And nobody's going to want to pay capital gains tax if they don't have to. So you could see something like, I call it last call at the bar. When somebody says, hey, anybody want drinks? It's 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
We could see something where basically people are trying to sell the properties that they've got right now.
Yeah.
Conduct a 1031 exchange, find the other properties on the other end, really, really quickly before these changes come through, if they come.
Absolutely.
And that's,
Absolutely.
sorry, Randy, I should have said at the beginning, the important thing here is these are proposals. Okay?
That's right.
It's the initial gambit. They will almost certainly be watered down, phased in, or eliminated with the horse trading that happens, on Capitol Hill. But you just need to be aware of these because they're certainly negative for homeowners.
Absolutely. And by the way, Scott, I don't know where you drink, but last call is in 10 p.m. where I'm at. So you got to find yourself a new bar. All right, story number 2 today. We're talking about this crazy market that we're in. So NAR has their confidence index survey out, and there's a link to that below. A couple important things. And this week, Scott, I get to play the guy who ducks so that the chart can be seen. We're going to figure this out, right?
It's
but
so
what's
cool.
interesting here, it's so cool, is if you look at going back into August of 2015, you're seeing that we had on average about 2.1 offers per property. And you see this big hockey stick up to the top in the right there. And we're sitting in the market now with about 4.8, almost 5 offers per property. Now, you're all feeling this, right? What's really interesting, and Scott's going to talk in a bit about some of the hot markets across the country. This chart right here is showing sort of the average number of offers per state. So if you look at California, you look at Arizona, you go into Texas, then you go sort of down to Florida. Georgia looks hot. We're going to talk a bit about New Hampshire in a moment, right? So you can see these sort of hot markets that have tons and tons of offers. Now,
which is the hottest one? What's in terms of multiple offers? Which one is the highest, Randy?
It's looking at, on this chart, it's looking at New Hampshire and Georgia actually at 6, and Arizona also at 6. So we've got a few markets here.
Look at Utah there. You blind as a bat.
Oh my gosh, it's right next to my head too. There you go. Utah is at 7. That's crazy. I've spoken to a lot of agents, Scott, this week about this problem, and it's a really challenging time, right? Like you're gonna have to dig deep, and you're gonna have to be the counselor to your buyers during this crazy, crazy market. Now, a couple other things to look at.
And one quick thing. Sorry, Randy, to interject, but you got to remember that if there are 7 bids on every property in Utah, that means that 6 people didn't win and they're going to the next one. And that kind of behavior means that it's in your best interest to put bids on 5 or 6 things at one time, which makes it even worse.
It really does. It really does. Yeah. I mean, we're seeing consistently appraisal contingencies waived on these offers. Hopefully you're not getting your buyers to waive the inspection. I think that's an important thing to keep in the process. Second piece of data though here I think is really important is about the down payments. So, if you go back to 2008, we were sitting at about 18.3% down payment in terms of the cash down payment on a transaction. That continued to climb, and then it just sort of has been on a downward trend over the last several years. That is bumping back up for, I think, really obvious reasons, which is to make a competitive offer, you're going to want to put a lot of cash down. And so if you look at specifically here, the reasons that a buyer's offer was rejected, these are the top reasons, right? So number 1 is a low offer, which makes sense, right? It looks like properties are going up. It feels like it week over week. Number 2 is other cash buyers. Number 3 are other non-contingent buyers, and so on and so forth. So we're seeing cash down payments go up. And what we're also seeing, according to a lot of the agents that I'm speaking to, is that people are taking the gains of the last few years and they're just rolling them all into a new property, Scott, as you were talking about. So there's a lot happening in the market right now. Now, the good news is that housing starts are up. Housing starts are way up. So I think right now housing starts in March were up, or I'm sorry, in April we're up to about 1.8 million. The average for the quarter,
annualized.
What's the annualized? Yep, exactly. And so we're starting to see some of that. We're also starting to see, I think we can feel this, Scott, right, and see this around us, people sort of getting out and about again as well. So maybe going to feel more comfortable with having people in their homes. So we might start to see some easing in terms of the overall market. So Scott, that's story number 2. Number 3 is back on you.
En fuego.
En fuego.
So the realtor.com puts out a regular piece a couple weeks into the next month that looks at the hottest markets. And it's something that I look at every month and usually feature in notables because I think it's so interesting. It's a real-time tracker of which markets are seeing kind of outsized activity. The 2 things that they look at are the number of online searches for a given property relative to in a given state relative to the national average. Right. And so in other words, are properties in New Hampshire seeing, 5 times as many property searches per listing as it is nationwide? And then the second thing they look at is just how low the days on market are. in other words, how quickly are homes disappearing from the market? How quickly do homes sell? And so we've got the Realtor.com article for March, and the two cities that topped the list were both in New Hampshire, the Granite State, and actually Nashua and Manchester have been in the top 20 for many, many years. It's quite interesting. I mean, these are cities I don't know much about as a West Coast guy.
Yeah.
But what you see, and I think this is amazing, is most of these cities in this top 20 list, they're smaller towns. These are not huge places like Los Angeles or Seattle. And they're also much more widespread. So within the top 20 hottest markets, 10 states were represented.
Wow.
Right? So you got places like Spokane in Washington, I think Madison in Wisconsin, Coeur d'Alene in Idaho.
Your neck of the woods, Scott.
Yeah, that's right. And so it's really interesting just to really see on a monthly basis how much the growth has shifted towards smaller cities, and particularly smaller cities that are nearby or in adjacent states to your large metro markets.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's pretty crazy. How often is this data published, Scott? Once every month?
Yeah, once every month. If you go onto realtor.com/research,
yeah,
that's where it shows
that's
up.
Right.
Or
awesome.
You could just take the easy route and just open Notables, open the daily list report every day. I'm going to be featuring it every month because I think it's so interesting.
It really is. And that's what you should all be doing. Scott, we're at 11 minutes today. We're trying to keep this thing to 10 minutes. So I think we could find a great way to wrap. And I can't think of a better way to wrap the show. After all of you subscribe and comment below, please let us know if you like this format, if you like this show. But I think that there's an opportunity for an Idaho Spud to take us out. What do you think?
I think that can be arranged.
Let's do it. We'll see you all next week.
Hello, it's the Idaho Spud with some real estate jokes. Yeah. Hey, do you know that with prices so high in the United States, it might be time to look south? Yeah, because if you buy a home in Mexico, you don't pay so much. Hey, there was a real estate agent who sold a house and he wanted to do something nice for his client. So he ordered some flowers. But when the flowers arrived, the note said, "Rest in peace." The client was furious. So he called the florist and he explained his anger. And the florist calmly said, "Sir, I understand your anger. However, think about this. Somewhere right now, there is a funeral with some flowers that say, 'Enjoy your new home.'" You really got to pay close attention to lawn signs during an election. Last time I voted for a real estate agent.